I can't believe what I am seeing right now as trade talks are going crazy, not just with the Montreal Canadiens, but also the Minnesota Wild. And one recent article links a Wild's young 2C to Montreal in exchange for a top defensive prospect, David Reinbacher. We have to dive into the report and something from Daily Faceoff that indicates there was an Eastern Conference team in on Rossi as early as last fall. Trade rumors are getting nuts, but it's not just that. We have another update on one of our prospects playing over in the Swiss League, a recent champion who is officially joining Team Austria. A bunch of great stuff coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. And we're going to start with Vinzenz Rohrer. Now, Jesse, the World Hockey Championship is underway. Vinzenz Rohrer is a member of Team Austria for this tournament. I think this is just awesome. Back on May 5th, it was officially confirmed. He was named. We saw him play a couple warm-up games, and now the tournament's fully underway, which is awesome. But this sort of slipped under my radar, honestly, because he's a prospect that, while maybe not one of our like S-tier prospects or anything like that, he does his work and he does it well. 5'11", been described as a Mike Keane type player. Some people throwing the name Brendan Gallagher around. One of those guys that hustles and gets it done. And Jesse, even if he doesn't do much in this tournament, I'm not sure how much we'll see him. I hope we see him a good bit because Austria doesn't have that many players. He played a pretty good role for Zurich, playing a lot of third line. How are you feeling about Vinzenz Rohrer, a guy we don't talk about a lot, but I love to see him get on that national stage?
I mean, this is somebody that former NHL coach Mark Crawford, former Stanley Cup winning coach Mark Crawford, really believes in this guy, having coached him for a couple of years there over in Switzerland. So for me, that always really mattered. A big Mark Crawford guy over here. And he kind of points out like some key things in his game, which again, you bring up like Gallagher, who isn't just an NHL player, but like a very beloved player for, his compete that he really brings in. I mean, we're seeing that with Rohrer as well. He has that possibility. Like, it's going to be an uphill climb of when he gets to Laval, when he gets offered that entry level contract. But I mean, having that compete, playing with that pace, that speed, but also that hockey IQ, those details to the games, even though we know he's not like, projected to be a top 6 guy. But again, somebody that has that toolkit of working really hard, playing that strong defensive game, while showing that he can kind of chip in offensively. There is a spot for this guy somehow to make a bottom 6 in the NHL. Now, there's still a fair amount of work to make that happen. The Habs still have until June 1st of next year to sign him to his entry-level contract. But like, Josh, I feel like there's a good chance that he could kind of work and really kind of get this deal. I mean, once he gets to Laval, all bets are off from there.
We'll start seeing him a lot more if he comes to Laval, but I know Zurich wants him back badly, and for good reason. Like, this dude played a lot of penalty killing. He blocked a lot of shots this year. He's just one of those guys that just gets things done, and those guys are always valuable. Look at a guy like Jake Evans. You turn into a great penalty killer, you become incredibly valuable to your team. Even a guy like Armia, even a guy like Josh Anderson, who couldn't get the offense going, became a great penalty killer. We've changed our perception on him a little bit, so really cool to see this from Vinzenz Rohrer, and I'm realizing, Jesse, this is a very Austria-centric video here with Vinzenz Rohrer coming from Feldkirch. All Austria video here today, so shout out to any Austrian fans. But yeah, leave your thoughts on Rohrer down below. We'll get to see what Austria does in this World Hockey Championship. Really excited to see it, but yeah, we got to move on to some trade talks, Jesse. And look, we know the Habs are looking for a 2C. I mean, we all know Kent Hughes' big quote, we want to add talent. Yeah, we do want to add talent, and 2C is one of those guys. And there is a guy that we've talked about a lot, Jesse, and that's Marco Rossi out of Minnesota, and a recent report, link this down below as well, from Daily Faceoff, saying, look, there have been no advancements in contract talks with him. Talks about trading Rossi is all that's going on around the Minnesota Wild. Trust me, I know. But they have all options on the table in terms of his future. But his name has been out there going back to last summer, and at least one Eastern Conference team had loose talks with the Wild in the fall of last year. So whether that's Montreal or not really sure, but apparently that team expressed concern that he's maybe too small. We'll get into that in a minute, Jesse. But look, a recent article from Hockey Wilderness that's also linked down below said, how about the Wild target Austrian right shot defenseman David Reinbacher for Rossi? Reinbacher 6'3", version of Spurgeon and Faber mixed together, and they basically say that St. Louis is a small player, so he can help Rossi learn. Look, when we're looking at the Habs roster right now, Jesse, Rossi, in terms of skill, he fits. In terms of size, he's very small. What are your thoughts in general on a Reinbacher for a 2C trade or Reinbacher for Rossi? Because I feel like those two things don't necessarily go hand in hand here.
The Austrian connection.
Yeah.
I like Rossi, but I'm passing on this trade. The reason for that, Josh, is like making this trade would kind of be like robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
Like, we know we need that 2C, but we also need that right-hand D that David Reinbacher really supplies from us. And I think it's almost questionable of like, what do we need most? Like that 2C or that right-hand D? You could make a strong argument to 2C, but he would need to kind of fill in that size that we need. Like, I've always been a believer in Rossi. Even watching the OHL, I always thought that he would have success at the NHL level. And you feel hard that, like, he's done nothing but get better since he's got there. But for whatever reason, why he's maybe looking to be on the outs over with Minnesota is probably the same reason why I would pass him. Is like, the Habs, they're looking like a playoff team now. What did Kent Hughes say that they're really looking for in this offseason? Definitely that 2C, but we're looking for that size as well. You know, that 5'9", you know, a hair over 182 pounds just isn't quite fitting exactly what we're looking for, considering that the Habs had a history not too long ago of Camilleri, Gianta, some of those kind of smaller guys sometimes. I think that this Montreal Canadiens, this generation, this iteration of the team is looking to kind of break that mold. And I mean, we know that defense is really going to be so important, like for the Montreal Canadiens. I think in the playoffs, like it was almost a lot of, for sure, that goal support could have been come in handy, but obviously defense and some of those breakdowns there was almost, you could argue, a bigger factor in really all of this. There's no mistake though, Josh. Like we need a 2C and we need a right-hand D, and that's why I would want to use our picks. I don't want to take from something that we already need to kind of compensate for somewhere else in the team. We got the picks right there. We need our boy David Reinbacher, and I'm all for bringing in 2C with, you know, production similar to Rossi. I just want a little bit more size there come playoff time.
And it's not just you. I mean, Jeff Gorton was talking about size and that physicality. Like, we need to bring that edge to Montreal, and I think there are 2Cs that fit that bill. Again, I don't think Byfield's going to be necessarily available, but he seems to be the guy that Gorton is essentially describing every single day. But look, like, I love David Reinbacher. By the way, I'm just realizing this now. Rossi and Rohrer are both from Feldkirch, which is kind of interesting, and Reinbacher's from Hohenems, which is literally 20 minutes down the road. So, like, these guys all probably have stuff to do with one another, but regardless, like, look, if we're trading David Reinbacher, first of all, I don't want to. I want to see him with Montreal. I think he's going to have an incredible impact. I think he's going to be amazing. My opinion, I don't want to trade him. But if we do trade him, if management thinks that's the right decision, to me, it has to be for an absolutely perfect fit that fills that 2C void very, very well. And you also need to have plans to fill that right D spot, whether with, you know, draft picks, whatever, right? You can make a team while moving out Reinbacher, but for me, it's just not going to be for Rossi. Like, I like Marco Rossi, and I want to provide some context here, right? 60 points this season, most of those, well, a lot of those coming when Kaprizov was healthy, even though Kaprizov only played 41 games. But when Rossi didn't have Kaprizov, the points started to drop a bit, of course. But 60 points, look, if he came to Montreal, he'd probably be playing with Ivan Demidov, right? So, like, that's another great thing. But in the playoffs, he was relegated to the fourth line center role playing with bruisers. Well, Justin Brazeau he's 6'5" or whatever, but he doesn't even use his body. And Yakov Trenin, who's just a defensive physical guy. And even still, Rossi managed to get 2 goals assisted by those guys on the fourth line. Minnesota doesn't like small guys, but I think, Jesse, like, as much as the article wants to say, hey, look, Martin St. Louis can teach him how to be good while he's small, they don't really understand the dynamics that Montreal has right now in this forward group. I think, again, Jesse, my main concern, my ultimate point, see if you agree here. Reinbacher for a perfect fit 2C, I would have to be convinced, because I don't want to move Reinbacher, but I could see it. Reinbacher for someone that just reduces size from this team again, even if objectively the skill level of Rossi is pretty good, I can't bring myself to do this. I don't see how this actually benefits Montreal in the long term.
For sure. And you're twisting my arm here, but you are right. Like, to get that value, and this is what we need to get into this offseason. It's like, if we're going for that big fish, it's definitely going to cost us. But at the same time, if we're sending out a Reinbacher to get out that 2C, I don't even want like a draft pick that is going to become a right-hand D. Like, I need somebody who's ready, who we can plug into that top 4 tomorrow. But that's why I like it, David Reinbacher. I feel like David Reinbacher can't play for the Montreal Canadiens next year. Like, we're not going to get a top 4 right-hand D coming back. I feel like being better than what Reinbacher has on the table. Like, even though he's had the injuries and different things, like, I believe in this guy. Like, Reinbacher is a great player. He's got swag. He's a team first. He seems to fit like the culture of really this team, right? Of really kind of being a team first type of guy, humble, but at the same time, he knows when to really bring his A game, and he's got that fire in him as well, right? So I'm loving seeing David Reinbacher growing right in front of us. If we do, though, it's like we got to make sure that we're having a plan for that for on defense as well, because that's going to be huge going forward for next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of names out there. Like, Noah Dobson's been one of these names that's now been linked to a bunch of teams, with the Islanders getting the #1 pick and stuff. But, like, we'll have to wait and see again. I don't necessarily want to move him, but look, at the end of the day, there's only a few people that are surely 100% untouchable. I'd love to say Reinbacher's one. At this point, I don't know. It depends what the offers are. I don't think this is one that would cause me to move Reinbacher, but maybe you disagree. Maybe you think this makes sense. I know a lot of you probably won't think it makes sense. You're maybe more on board with us, but let us know your thoughts on everything down below, because that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for tuning in every single day. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.